Hi there, this is Sandra from the Schwowin's Nest. Welcome to my Holly Jolly Christmas series. This box is something that I had thrifted a while ago. It's already gotten a coat of paint for a different project, so I'm going to repurpose it for this one. I just need to remove the latch. I'm going to sand down the wood where the latch was just to make an even surface. This paint that I'm using is just an eggshell paint that can be used anywhere in your home. It was a mist tint that I picked up at the hardware store, and it's kind of a taupey gray color. It's fairly dark, but I thought it would be a really nice base coat for a wood texture. So I'm going to give this whole box one coat. I needed to add something inside the box to make it higher. So this is just a cardboard box that I had laying around. I cut it to size and now I'm going to hot glue it to the bottom of the box. Instead of painting this, I'm going to just fold up a piece of paper a couple of times over and then cut it to fit and glue that right on top of the cardboard. I also put a bead of hot glue between the paper and the box just to hold it in place better. Now I'm going to work with these little pieces of scrap wood and I'm just going to glue the triangle pieces onto the rectangle pieces and make little wood houses. With a dry brush and some burnt umber acrylic paint, I'm going to go around the edges like this and make it look like wood grain. Once the brown is dry, I'm going to start doing the same thing with black. A dry brush. Actually, I'm using the same brush, and I'm just going to make it look more distressed and old and weathered. I'm making a little bottle brush village, and what I've done here is just put all of the bottle brush trees in there to plan how I want it to look. Then I decided that I wanted to raise the houses, make them just a little bit taller, so I'm using a tumbling tower block and I'm going to glue that onto the bottom of each of the houses. Then I'm just going to use hot glue to glue the house in place. I'll repeat the same thing for the second one. Then I'm just going to start hot gluing the trees onto the paper. I've left the plan in place and I'm just going to pick up each tree individually, add some hot glue to the bottom and stick it down. I've got a whole big box of bottle brush trees from last year and from this year, but I came across these little birch branches that were really sweet. I think I picked these up at my Dollarama last year for a buck 25, I think for two. And I'm just going to be pulling apart the branches to make it look more like a natural tree. I decided to add a couple at the back and one in the front. Then I started putting the little bottle brush trees in, and this kind of changed a little bit. I just wanted them in the front a little bit, but I also used them around the sides and the back for some fillers. For a final touch, I'm going to use some Epsom salts and put them in where there's all the white space to cover up the paper and to give it a little bit more of a Christmas snowy look. There really isn't an easy way to glue down these Epsom salts. I didn't want them to lose their sparkle, so I will probably take the salt out once I go to store it after the holidays. Here's how my little box Christmas village looks. My next project for you is using all dollar store products. I have three Dollar Tree Christmas trees, and this is a wood look pot that I picked up at Dollarama in the summertime and never used it. So I thought it would be the perfect addition for this tree. So I am sure everyone is familiar with these little Dollar Tree trees. They are worth $1 because they're very sparse, but if you do a little magic with them, you can make them look better. So what I'm doing is opening up the tree and I'm going to just open it up one side. So I'm going to leave the back side flat and I'm just going to open up all of the branches and I'll do that for two of them. What I'm going to do now is put them together back to back so the both flat sides will meet in the center. And I'm just going to use some small black zip ties or cable ties to hold them together. I'm going to add one at the bottom and one towards the top. I've taken out the third tree and I've fluffed it all the way around. Now I'm going to zip tie that onto the first bunch of trees about a third of the way down. These zip ties are on the shorter side, so I just put two of them together and that will do the trick. Then I'm going to end up with a 2.5 foot tree. This is what the tree looks like. Now it is out of shape because I've got the bottom fluffed and then it goes narrow. And then I've got bigger branches from the bottom of the third tree and then going narrow again. Well, I'm going to give you a trick to fix that. So what I'm doing here is fluffing it out as best I can. And please excuse the craft space behind the tree. This is what some of my craft room looks like. And if you're a fellow crafter, you probably have the same kind of thing happening in your home. Otherwise, you wouldn't be a crafter. I've got a piece of floral foam glued to the bottom of the container, and now I'm just going to push the tree right down into it. So here's another Dollar Tree product that I'm sure everyone is familiar with. It's those wired garland ties. I've got a pack here. I think there are 12 or 15 in a pack. What I'm going to do is just kind of run my fingers around it to fluff up the branches a little bit better. And then I'm going to cut it into 3 different pieces. Real Christmas trees don't have single branches coming out from the trunk of the tree. So what I'm going to do to the majority of these branches is take the pieces that I've cut, wrap them around the individual branches about halfway down, and then it will become a branch with 3 stems on it instead of 1 stem. This is going to make the tree look so much more high end and realistic. So I'm going to continue to do that and fill out the tree. That third tree on the top needs a haircut. So you can see that I've already trimmed one side of it and I'm going to go ahead and trim the other side because I want this to be a taller, narrower tree. I don't need all of these branches sticking out so far from the original trunk. You can see it's already starting to look better. What I'm going to do with those little bits that I cut off is use some hot glue and glue them in towards the stem to give the trunk and the center of the tree a little bit more fullness. Okay, now check this out. This is 3 Dollar Tree trees. And look at how beautiful it's turned out. Oh, plus a package of the garland ties. It looks beautiful. So what I'm going to do now is just decorate it with some fillers and a little bit of white berries and some pine cones. I want this tree to be more natural and rustic. I'm not gluing any of these pieces into the tree because I'm probably going to do a little bit of a different theme with it next year. So I want to be able to just pull everything off at the end of the season. I'm also now going to take it outside and give it a spray of snow. The last project that I have today is using this rustic wood frame that I built out of some scrap pallet wood and some thin MDF, and I put the frames together all at once a couple of weeks ago when the weather was still really nice and I was able to get outside and use my table saw. I'm going to paint the interior of the sign, so the panel, with a couple of coats of Rust-Oleum Linen White chalk paint. I'm using a bit of black in with this beautiful green color to make a really deep, dark green. I want my Christmas tree sign to not be the traditional farmhouse black and white sign. I'm thinking that a little bit of green might look really nice. Instead of stenciling in the design, I'm going to use my dry brush and I'm going to do a dry brush technique with all of these trees. This is something that I kind of stumbled upon a while back, and I really love the effect of this. I think a solid tree looks nice too, but I'm just loving this type of texture that I'm getting from the dry brushing. As I was filming this reveal, I realized that I haven't done a big reveal like this in a really long time. So, ta-da! There are my three beautiful Christmas trees. The touch of green, I think, is just perfect. There were a couple of areas that got a little bit of a thicker color, so I decided just to go in with my little paintbrush here and just add a little bit more dimension to the trees. The other thing that I decided to do was take a little bit of black on a small dry brush and just add a little bit more dimension to the trunk at the bottom of each of the trees. A few weeks ago, I was at the Dollar Tree and they had these beautiful lettering stencils, these alphabet stencils. They are super high quality. The stencil itself is really nice and thick. I like to cut my stencils apart into the strips because they're easier to manage. You can leave them whole if you want, but when I'm working with smaller dimensions and I need to get inside, I would rather have them separate. So I'm going to be just stenciling on with a makeup sponge and some black paint. And of course, keeping with farmhouse tradition, I'm going to use the words farm fresh at the top, and then I'm going to put something a little bit different down at the bottom. I've also got a makeup sponge tip for you. The ones I'm using here are very soft. They're not the ones I had previously. This is a new bag that I bought and they're really, really soft. You really have to use a lot of pressure to get the color to go on. So I'm going to be tossing these and I'm going to be looking for some firmer ones. So just make sure that they are a really nice firm sponge and not anything too squishy. Down at the bottom, I'm using my pencil to write out the words pine, spruce, and fir. Now I'm just going to trace over the letters using my favorite scrapbooking marker, which is really old. I've had it for a very long time, but it has stood the test of time. It still has tons of ink in it. And I like to use this instead of my Craft Smart oil-based markers when I'm doing more of a fine line font. Using my ruler, I'm just going to mark some long lines in between the words. I'm using the fine tip end of the same marker, and I like to draw shadow lines on my fonts. This makes them look more finished and more professional. The last thing I'm going to do for this sign is add some grain sack striping to both ends. There's a little bit too much white space, so I needed to add something in. I'm starting about a half an inch in, and I'm just going to do one of the thick marker lines all the way down. Then I'm going to move in about another quarter of an inch and do another set of lines, which will be the thicker stripe. And then I'll do another thin stripe on the opposite side. One thing that I like to do when I'm using markers and a ruler is every time I pick it up, I wipe off the ink. There's always a little bit of ink left over, and when I'm working on a white space, I don't want any of that ink to transfer and make a mess. Finally, I wanted to add some greenery. I have these picks that I got in a bag from Amazon, and they will be linked down in my description box. And I've also got a few of the Dollar Tree pine cones. I'm just going to use some hot glue and attach those to the top of the frame. I just love how this sign turned out, and I've got it hanging in my living room. I hope you enjoyed these 3 Christmas tree DIYs. If you did, I want you to stick around. Hit that subscribe button. Those 2 black arrows will show you exactly where to click. Thank you so much for watching right to the end. I really appreciate it. See you in the next one.